Next question. Abortions. How does this affect a woman? Could this be a case where a soul is forced to come in fragments while the mother is still on her path of becoming?
There is no such concept as terminating a pregnancy. There is a concept that the child always knows there will be an abortion. Always. And the child comes only for one reason, to let the mother know, I exist, it's time to shift your worldview. Because this is still an event that, seriously, even if on the surface nothing seems visible or audible, something inside the mother clicks and rewires. And sometimes a woman may need to go through several abortions in order to eventually give birth to the child she is meant to give birth to. But it's important to understand that if a woman has many abortions, then the child she eventually gives birth to will be strongly connected to the past, to the world of the dead, strongly connected no matter what. I don't want to go into astrology, but the principle is this. Somewhere, on some level, she carries massive ancestral debts, places where she failed to save or help many people. And through these abortions, she repeatedly symbolically puts herself to death through that child. Very often, when an abortion happens, the soul that comes is the soul of the woman herself. It's as if she is subjecting herself to her own inquisition for ways she once treated others poorly.
I've heard information that there are women who absolutely must not have an abortion, otherwise their destiny collapses completely, like a total failure to fulfill their life program. Is there a way to understand, without complex calculations, whether you should give birth no matter what, or whether this is self-punishment?
Trust your inner sensing, always, and there will always be a person, always, in 100 out of 100 cases, who won't pressure you, but will step in and say, listen, if you give birth, I'm here. Everything will be okay, and I'll support you. It never happens that a woman is completely alone and doesn't know what to do, because if she truly is alone, then she already knows exactly what to do. And if there's a dilemma, but birth is the right path, someone will definitely appear and say, listen, you need to give birth. Damn, I feel it, I see it. And that will be a strong person, not manipulative, but genuinely strong.
Why are twins born, a boy and a girl? How does this intrauterine connection affect their lives in adulthood? And same-sex twins are also interesting.
Here I'd first ask you what your intuition says, and then I'd add how I see it.
Twins usually come when the mother has a split within herself. Multiple inner aspects live inside her and haven't fully reconciled with each other. So for this to remain compatible with stable psychology and balanced energy, it splits into two separate people. Not with identical programs, but with essentially one soul.
Yes, and there's an important point. Even though they may be born minutes apart, sometimes just 10 minutes, but damn, they are radically different. At least all the twins I've met, they are very different.
We even talked recently, and you predicted completely different life paths for twin boys around 15 years old, even though they look absolutely identical. I honestly couldn't tell them apart.
And very often their internal software is actually opposite. They are like two poles. That's why siblings born 5 years apart may share more similarities than twins do.
Because they have to be antagonists.
They will always be opposites. I've seen cases where one is kind and the other is aggressive. One is sharp and the other is less intellectually inclined.
Let's use gentler contrasts, like one is calm, the other more active.
Exactly. They are completely different. And when two or more children are born at the same time, this also points to a deep lack of love within the mother, a serious lack of love.
Toward herself?
Always toward herself first, and only then toward the world. Love comes from abundance, which means she interacts with the world in a very fragmented way. She divides everything too much.
The split you mentioned earlier?
Yes, division into differences. This is one thing that is something entirely separate, even though it's all one system, like a wheel that belongs to the same car.
Next question. What does a breech birth indicate? How does it affect later life? What should one pay attention to in adulthood? I assume this was written by the child themselves, but maybe not.
First of all, the mother had absolutely no capacity to process the enormous level of realization that this child is meant to bring into the world.
What should they pay attention to in adulthood?
There are two positions, what I feel and everything else is false. That's it. This person must live by two reference points, what I feel
So relying on one's own feelings?
and everything else is false. Exactly. If someone says something and I don't feel it that way, I act only according to what I feel, and then life works out beautifully. And it's important to remember that your mother couldn't give you even 1,000th of what you needed. Because of that, you'll have to rely only on yourself and your inner sensing, through which you'll ask, how much love is there? How interesting is this to me? And how much do I genuinely want to engage with it?
Next question. A child is almost 3 years old, not speaking yet, but understands everything. Loves cartoons only in English and Spanish, and refuses Russian or Ukrainian entirely. How do we fix this? The first thing I'll say is that it's surprising you're the mother of a 3-year-old and don't know that multilingual children often don't speak until age 3, sometimes even until 5, because they are processing 3 or 4 languages at once. Even with just 2 languages, children often start speaking later. This is completely normal and not a developmental issue at all. The only thing the mother really needs here is self-education on the topic. Even a basic online search will confirm what I've just said. Remove the anxiety around this and focus on building sensory, emotional connection. At least in one language, you must have deep emotional attunement. That means you, as the mother, speak to the child in one language, the one through which you feel the world most fully and feel the child most deeply. Let daycare, neighbors, and other kids speak whatever languages they want. That's fine. But you speak to your child in the language of your deepest inner sensing. If you want to add anything, go ahead.
A mother is the carrier of the karma of the country she was born in. When a child senses that the country is in an extremely difficult state, subconsciously the child begins to attach to the egregore of another country or another language, the one that feels like salvation. And since children usually have unconditional intuition, they intuitively gravitate toward the languages that feel like a way out, a rescue. What does the mother need to do? Minimize contact with her homeland as much as possible. Close relatives, extended family, friends, acquaintances, businesses, cut them off if there is such an opportunity.
What happens if she minimizes contact with her homeland and with the people who tie her to her lineage?
Then the child will calmly speak any language, Russian or Ukrainian, easily and without tension.
Including with the mother?
Yes, and for the child, it won't be a problem. It will simply be another foreign language, and the child will be multilingual. But for yourself, it's important to understand that, for example, the English language has its own neural wiring. French, Spanish, German, if you know this, each has its own structure. They don't overlap, but they can connect, and you start finding similarities in phrases and words. I noticed an interesting thing when Nicole and I would go to restaurants, and people who had lived in the US or Canada for a long time knew Russian but mostly spoke English. They couldn't translate the menu for me at all. They would read it to me in the language they were reading in, English. I'd ask, so what does that mean? And they would just freeze. Meanwhile, Nicole would translate on the fly. She reads in English and speaks to me in Russian. This again points to multiple connections and a multidimensional perception of the world. When a person lives in a flat, linear perception, they can't find analogies, whether between cars, vacuum cleaners, or houses. This affects everything, because if you find a word in one language, a connection to another language should automatically activate. The same applies to different areas of life. There must be permeability between them, because we are exactly who we are in the small details.
What's behind a child constantly screaming?
The mother's fears and claims, hatred toward the surrounding world, and an unwillingness to take responsibility for any of it. There is dissatisfaction. There are demands, but I won't do anything myself. Everyone owes me, and I'm conservative. That's it. A child screams for one simple reason: conservative views, demands toward others without willingness to energetically pay for what she expects people to do for her. What's the core issue here? When we have inner strength and give energy to another person while asking something, they always do it. But when we ask someone to go to the store and buy everything with their own money, they won't do it. So you transmit to the child a state where they want something, but you give them no energetic backing to actually get it, like sending them to a store with no money. And the store doesn't give things for free, so the child screams. The child isn't screaming because they aren't given something. They scream because the mother hasn't aligned requests with the energy required to fulfill them. For example, if we give a child a task, like washing dishes, from a place of inner love, the child goes and does it. No resistance even arises, and they may even enjoy it because energy was transmitted. But if we hate washing dishes and say, "You're going to wash the dishes," then we transmit hatred toward washing dishes, and the child responds, "I'm not doing it, I'm going to play soccer."
The first step a mother should take, at least one step.
Admit that she chose the role of victim and consumer. Stop thinking through negation and the belief that everyone owes her something. Allow herself to move into growth and to apply effort so something can actually happen, instead of demanding that someone else do it for her. Whether it's her husband, neighbor, brother, sister, or parents, no one owes us anything. If someone owes us, they are actually forgiving us. Because when we energetically pay someone for something, they experience enjoyment and a sense of embodied aliveness in doing it for us. That's it. Anything else becomes an obligation, one that we end up paying for a very long time and at a very high cost.
The next question we partially touched on: why doesn't a child sleep during the day, sleeps poorly at night, or refuses to eat?
Because you are bringing other people's problems into the home. Too much empty talk, too much negative information consumed from YouTube and social media. And on top of that, you're likely interacting with people who are not very happy.
So it's primarily a reaction to the environment?
Yes, want your children to sleep deeply at night? Mom and dad, when you come home from work, leave work behind the door. Inside the home there is love, children, embodied joy, sex, aliveness. That's it. And additionally, the more interest you have in moving into the new, the more deeply and sweetly your child sleeps during the day.
How can parents help a child who has been walking on tiptoes since around age 2? Massages and orthopedists don't help. How do we support the child?
An orthopedist won't help you. At the very least, you need to see an osteopath or a kinesiologist.
Meaning you don't need to run around to every osteopath and kinesiologist.
Right. And on top of that, the mother simply needs to agree to work on herself. Then the osteopath will appear, the one who can resolve it in a single session. And in extreme cases, you can also turn to spiritual alignment. We have plenty of friends.
What if that was already done?
If it was done and there's no result, it indicates that the mother has more knowledge, skills, and rightness than acceptance, consent, and love. That means reducing anxiety, rigidity, and the attempt to save everyone around, playing Mother Teresa and listening endlessly to complaints. More humor, more embodied joy, more interest, more switching states and gratitude for everything. And to the degree the mother integrates this on a reflexive level, the child will begin to stand firmly on their feet.
Next question. Why does a child show sexualized behavior from around age 5? He's now 6.5 and it continues. Is this something we haven't worked through and the child is expressing it for us? How should we respond and correct it?
Very simple. It means there are no sincere man-woman relationships. All unrealized programs flow into children, either as illnesses or as behaviors.
This is something we explained in detail in previous sessions.
Yes. I've seen many families where, for example, a mother no longer feels love or happiness with her husband. When she has massive grievances toward him, the role of the husband is unconsciously taken on by the young son. He begins to look at her as a woman.
How should parents respond and correct this?
Either divorce the husband or restore the relationship with him. Don't torture yourself, don't torture your man, and don't transfer this massive stress onto your child.
And restoration begins with sincere conversations.
The foundation of any relationship is sincere conversations, emotional closeness, touch, tenderness, openness, and that naturally leads to deep sexual connection.